I'm just going to read a
we're right to go, Heather.
I'm going to read a preamble to start with. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions regarding gatherings and the need to comply with social distancing measures, all council meetings will be held at the Holbrook Library complex until further notice. Also, due to the COVID-19 restrictions and until further notice, residents will not be able to attend the public forum in person. However, should residents have an issue they wish to bring before council, they can provide a written statement which will be distributed to the councillors and read out prior to the commencement of the meeting. Any written statement should be provided to council by 5 p.m. on the day preceding the meeting. Residents will not be able to attend meetings in person. Council live stream meetings so that the public may view the proceedings of the meeting in real time or later, and you can log on to the council website for that. So I'll now ask Mr. General Manager if he would read the that we've received. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so the correspondence is from Olivia and Philip Hannell, and it's Mayor, Councillor Heather Wilton and Councillors, dear Mr Pinnock and Mr Kane, regarding solar plant proposals in Greater Hume Shire. It has come to our attention that the councillors are to address the responses from the solar companies at the council meeting tonight. We are very disappointed in the time frame of being able to comment on this issue, especially the Gindera Solar Farm, and not being able to attend this important meeting because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Reasons of our concerns are as follows. It is in the wrong place. The importance of the land classification has not been taken seriously as important agricultural land. The unique lifestyle living of many residents is extremely important. Once again, the proponent only describes one side of the economic impact equation. The hurried document from the solar industry's chief consultant, GHC, does have some discrepancies, i.e., for instance, figure 2.1, page 27 of the amendment report describes the non-associated residents as associated. The argument put forward against the broad community concern for property devaluation are insulting. Property devaluation on page 42 of the submission report, NGH for the proponent advises that 58 community submissions raise the topic of property devaluations or devaluation of land, as they interpret the issue. On the same page, they write a few derisory paragraphs in response, starting with, no land value study has been undertaken specific to the solar plant development in Australia or specific to the Gindera Solar Farm proposal, etc. The two studies raised are probably the worst examples they could have used in support of their invalid conclusion. One could ask the obvious question of why there are no studies around solar farms in Australia. This is being completely ignored. The current hurried due process of the state significant project being put forward for determination is unfair, especially given the coronavirus pandemic and the possible impending depression. As you know, we are opposed to the solar plants within our Greater Hume Shire, as we believe good agricultural land is being targeted solely because of the TransGrid substation and infrastructure. We would like to ask our councillors to please take into consideration the inappropriate locations of these solar farms in the Greater Hume Shire when voting on this issue. Yours faithfully, Olivia Hannell and Philip Hannell.
Thank you very much. I'm going to declare the meeting open, the ordinary meeting of the Greater Hume Council, Wednesday 15th of April 2020. In accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this council meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Council's website for public information. All present today are reminded that by speaking, you are agreeing to your view and comments being recorded and published. You are also reminded that if or when speaking, you are to be respectful to others and use appropriate language. Greater Hume Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this meeting. I now ask Councillor Schill to lead us in prayer, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Heavenly Father, please help guide us this evening with the challenges we face, not only with the technology and the world we live in with the virus, but to have clear minds and hearts as we represent our ratepayers with the challenging decisions on the agenda. Thank you, and may we have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Councillor Shulk. Item number 3, the acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present. There are no apologies. Do we have applications for leave of absence? I don't think so. But just before we move on, I would just like to say on behalf of the councillors and staff, I'd like to extend sincere condolences to Councillor Parker and her family on the passing of her brother recently. Thank you. Item number 5, the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting.
Madam Mayor.
I'll second it.
Councillor Meyer and a seconder.
Yeah, Councillor O'Neill.
O'Neill, sorry, Councillor O'Neill. Thank you. Any discussion, comments, questions? All happy?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So how are we going to vote? Are we going to raise our hand or what are we doing?
Madam Mayor, Councillor Quinn's got a question, I think.
Yes, Councillor Quinn.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just a comment on the red rosettes. I had feedback from business people in Tolkien, Walla and Indra, and their comments weren't really to be publicised because they were not very pleasant. But I'd suggest that this present plague has opened the door for us all to trade, Gaia, back into early January because I have a few other dealings in public life with the IGA in Gindra. We switched all our purchasing to Gindra, and I would encourage everybody in the Shire now to support the local scene. It'll make a big difference. We're all creatures of habit, and for the last 40 years we've traded in Albury, and now as long as the Hume Bank opens again, I'll be able to do everything I want to do in Gindra. So I think that it's opened the door whilst a lot of people appear like the red rosettes, but it's really opened the door that we should trade locally. I'd urge all the councillors to get the executive staff to urge all the workforce to trade locally, and I think it will make a big difference to our businesses. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other comments or questions? Look, I'd just like to say we do have a policy of shop locally, which we have had for about 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I endorse your comments and hope that everybody would lift their game a bit. And that goes for everybody in the whole community, to be honest. Now, we've got a mover and seconder. Are you prepared to vote? How do we want to vote? By hand? Yep. Thank you. All in favour, carried. Thank you. Oh, that worked. That's good.
All in favour. If there is any discrepancy with the voting, please pull us up.
Yes, fair enough. Now, the action report from the minutes. Is there a question or a query out there? Please say so. Otherwise, we will move on. No.
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Yes.
Not a query or question about them, but we suddenly seem to have gone to a very print, and I'm finding exceedingly difficult to read it at this font. I wonder if we might pass those comments on to.
Yeah, I might make some comments there, Madam Mayor. Look, this is I was going to say a one-off, but it's possibly been a two-off over the last 3 months. Last couple of months. It's not intended that will be the case, and we'll revert to the other type of report next meeting.
Thank you.
That's great. Are there any comments or questions, councillors, regarding the action report? No?
Not at this stage.
Pardon?
Not at this stage, thank you.
Not at this stage, thank you. Item number 7, disclosure of interests. Are there any?
Yes, I'll be disclosing a non-pecuniary interest in environment planning items 4 and 5.
You. I will also be declaring one in governance. Item number 1, the response to the novel coronavirus regarding the deferral or waiving of rates and rental, etc., due to family friendship with the some people concerned. Now, no mayoral minute, notice of motion, nil. Reports from the officers. Please, this is very good. Development application.
Madam Mayor, I take that recommendation with regard to the modification of that development consent.
Could you just repeat that last comment?
I'd like to move the recommendation regarding the modification of the development consent, item 1.
Thank you. Susan, have a seconder. Councillor O'Neill, do you wish to make any comment, Councillor Knight?
Only if there's any contrary comment, thank you, but I don't believe that it has any great impact at all on the subdivision put forward.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, councillors?
Oh, just a comment, not to do with the motion, but the paper turning is interfering with the sound quite a bit. If people turning through their agenda, I'm not sure whether it's too close to the mic or what's happening, but that just makes it a little bit hard to hear sometimes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no opposition, I'm asking you to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
So that was unanimous, was it?
Item
Everyone was in
number
favour?
2, development application, two-lot subdivision in Halford Drive and Swift Street.
I'm happy to
Move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I'm happy to second it, Heather.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? No. Any opposition? I declare that carried. Thank you. Now, where are we? Next one is item number 3, the quarry.
Yeah, I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second that, yeah.
Councillor Shield?
Yep.
Yes.
Correct. Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Councillor?
No, it appears all straightforward. I don't think there's an issue with it.
Right, okay. Any other comments or questions from councillors? No. Any opposition? If not, I declare that one carried also. Thank you. This is
I'll be
great.
leaving now.
Pardon?
I'm going to.
You're leaving?
Yep.
Very good. 38.
Madam Mayor, when you're ready, I'm happy to move the recommendation, which is at the base of page 3 of 6, regard the Gindra Solar Farm.
Thank you.
I'll speak to it if anybody has any
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Knight, seconded Councillor. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it for the sake, so it can be discussed.
Thank you. Now,
If I might speak to the motion.
yes, please.
This one is the one is the only one, if people record, that I have opposed in all of this. And it's not because it's near me, because it's not near me, but it is near a lot of people.
It's within very short distance of a lot of hobby farm type developments, and as such, there's the room for an impact that doesn't necessarily apply on the others that we have received. And I do believe that even though I do like the idea of what they've put forward, some of the alterations they've made, I still do not believe it can possibly alleviate the concerns and the impacts on so many neighbours that are close by.
Thank you. Speaker 4. No, do you wish to speak, Councillor Shaw?
No, I tend to agree with Councillor Knight's comments.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think the developers have gone a long way towards answering the conditions that we put on. I think we should show acknowledgement that has happened so far. I believe that the project is going to happen. It will have a significant effect financially to council if we go along with it. They've gone out of their way to address most of the issues, and the fact that there's quite a lot of people around there that don't want it in their backyard, that's just life. It happens with every development right across the world. I think our submission should say that we accept that they've moved significantly towards the conditions that were raised, and we appreciate that, and we look forward to joining with them to have this voluntary funding proposal put forward and moved on. So I would be opposing the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, look, I have to just say to round off, I agree with what Councillor Quinn has said, and I understand and appreciate exactly what he said. But I do think that the proponents have gone a heck of a way to trying to accept the alterations that we requested, and I have to acknowledge that also. And I think we've got to move on. It's going to happen, whether we like it or not, and it's out of our hands. The actual decision is so.
Madam Mayor, and I acknowledge that Councillor Weston's got his hand up, but just for clarity, because what's been attached to the addendum report is the original submission, which is erroneously dated the 14th of April, and
yes.
then there's the response that is just a one-page response, is what the Director of Environment and Planning is proposing. I just want to make sure councillors are clear that the first letter is the original submission, and then the second letter is what's actually proposed to be forwarded to the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment under that resolution.
Councillor Weston?
Madam Mayor, I think we'd be doing our ratepayer service by supporting this project. I think the proponents have chosen the topics that they altered, and to my way of thinking, they didn't go far enough by a long shot. So I would be opposing this group with what they've come up with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Meyer?
I would vote against it, Madam Mayor, but I'm out of order in terms of you need somebody to speak for.
No, look, I'd prefer to have your opinion. Thank you.
I just believe that they haven't gone out to address the real basic on-the-ground issues that are taking place between those people who are most concerned about it in Gindra. It's quite obvious from these Gindra people who keep writing these letters and who want to keep talking to us that the real issues haven't been addressed. They've skirted the real issues in favour of trying to get it through quickly. So I would support the resolution move that we're not happy in terms of the way it's been presented.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Now, what is exactly the resolution? So, sorry, Councillor Parker.
I think just coming in late, sorry, Madam Mayor, but I'm glad that Mr. Pennick raised that because I was actually not reading it the way that it was. So, Councillor Knight, you're moving that motion or that letter be sent off to the department. Is that right?
The one addressed to Natasha Ponzi.
Yes.
That's the correct one. Yes. But can I also add, I've just looked at the wording of the second paragraph again, and having taken on board some of the comments that have been made now, the last line of the second paragraph says addressed most of council's concerns. I don't believe they have actually addressed most. They have responded to some of the concerns, maybe several of council's concerns, but certainly I don't believe most, because they have picked those that were readily available for them to alter and have avoided answering any of the others that have been put forward by so many proponents. So if the seconder of the motion didn't mind if I asked them if they would go ahead with addressing several of council's concerns, but I really don't believe most covers it in that they've avoided so many.
Yes. Getting at, sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Councillor Shulk, did you wish to comment?
Yes. Now, sorry, I'm a little bit lost again. But I agree that they haven't addressed all of them. So that wording, is important then, that they've only they haven't addressed all of them. Is that what they're saying? Yeah. The wording on the yes.
Can we have Councillor Parker?
Do we need to be saying what our concerns still are, or what we're still not satisfied with? Because I feel like we're sort of like we've said no, we were opposing of it, and then we're writing a letter going, yeah, we're happy with, which they have. They've come back with lots of solutions. I understand that, but do we need to be saying no, we're still not happy in these respects, and list them?
I think you got to do that because you've got to respond with comments. So I think if you're not happy for a blanket sign off like I've done, then you've got to still say the ones that you're still concerned about.
And we are excuse me, Madam Mayor, we are meant to be representing our ratepayers, so that's where the tug of war comes in a lot of these decisions.
Yeah.
And I would agree that we need to list what other concerns we still have.
Well, I'm not sure where we go from here because what did your motion exactly say, Councillor Knight?
What I suggest is it accepted the recommendation to provide the comments contained within Annex 1, and I'd take out the word most and put in several. I don't think my secretary, Councillor Shulk, agreed that could be done. If we needed to do dot points, I just believe that there are issues that they simply did not comment on, and we could take them quite readily from our first submission and place them into this letter. And I'd like to, as part of that motion, if that's appropriate, suggest that we ask our Director of Planning and Environment to include those that are very pertinent and have been raised again by ratepayers and put those in, and even if it said, for example, I do agree that if we're going to say they have addressed several of our concerns, the department will know those because they've got our initial submission. But if we want to make it clearer to them, perhaps we do need to put at least some examples of those they've hesitated to make any response to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure where we go from here. I'm looking for a bit of guidance, Mr. General Manager.
Can I ask a question for the rest of the councillors?
Yes.
Colin Kane, please. This matter goes before the planning panel in due course. Are you or the council going to appear before that planning panel as we did against the compost heap and other matters that we've been through in the past?
Oh, look, there's no certainty about it. I tried to get on I've tried to research what happens with the planning panel, Councillor Meyer, and sometimes they'll call people to present to them, but sometimes it can be completely a closed meeting. So there's no guarantees that they would ask if they think there's no guarantees of that I'd get a chance to present. That might happen, but that's up to the commissioners, I think, is from my understanding and reading. So
I would suggest then if that's the case, we ought to be very specific about what we object to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's right. I think that'd be best.
Councillor Knight, do you wish to speak again?
I thought I recollected that there was an issue came out of the panel that said that they would not be holding personal interviews. Maybe they're going to do theirs by some form of technology also. But I believe I did read somewhere that there would be no personal representations.
Madam Mayor, I might be able to add there. I did have some discussions with the Independent Planning Commission. And as Mr Kane says, there's no actual requirements for them to undertake or take submissions from the public, but they indicated to me that in this instance, or in the instance of solar farms in Greater Hampshire, it was likely. Now, of course, that was before COVID-19. Having said that, though, you know, I still think if they were of a mind to take submissions from either council or the community, that there would be a way of doing that electronically. I don't think there's going to be face-to-face meetings as that they possibly originally anticipated might occur, but if there were a mind to take public submissions in person, then it's going to be through some video link, I would think. But that's something that we can clarify. But I wonder if Mr Kane might be able to provide some guidance to councillors around what those dot points might be in this particular letter.
Oh, that's tricky. I'm sorry. I actually thought that they'd gone a relatively long way towards addressing council's concerns. I acknowledge that there's a lot of development there that's adjacent to the solar farm, but they have set it back a long way from boundaries, particularly along Glenallen Road now. It's quite a long setback with a lot of veg. It'd be tricky. It's really a subjective thing. It's really whether councillors believe they've done enough to set the development back or not. I mean, there's no real... I might believe it, but other people will think it's still too far, still not far back enough, and there's not enough screening, and so it isn't black and white.
We've lost.
Can I make a comment, Madam Mayor, please?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Councillor Quinn.
We've got a situation where it's unlikely people will change their attitude, whether they're for or against it. But the bottom line is the process is going on. It's most likely to happen. And the real question for council should be, do we want to be part of this partnership and get a lot of development in the Shire, or don't we? And if we adopt the positive attitude, the planning panel and the government might take it on board and work with us. If we adopt the negative attitude, I think we'll go in the waste paper basket. That's what will happen, because the state government have made a very significant contribution towards renewable energy. And I've never been in favour of it. I've always said that out front. But it's their ethic, what they're going for. And it's going to happen in our Shire, I think, whether we like it or not. So we either work with the developers or we take our bat and go home and say we're not going to have anything to do with it. And then the developers will ignore us. The response to those submissions are quite significant if you read through them. I have spent the time going through them. And they've adjusted, both these solar farms, or proposed solar farms, have adjusted a long way. And surely our thought ought to be able to adjust a little bit.
Be a bit more accommodating. All right, councillors, has everybody had their say, first of all? Because I think it is important that everybody has an opportunity.
Madam Mayor, I think you should clarify what we're voting on, because it's very, very overboard in terms of the report and what we're going to vote on. So we need to be very precise in terms of what you're asking councillors to vote on.
Yes. Could we have that motion read out, please, Mr. Penny?
Well, I don't know whether it's necessarily reading the motion out, because councillors have got that in front of them. Essentially what the motion is voting on, though, is the correspondence addressed to Natasha Homsey in Annexure 1. So with the change that the development, in the second paragraph, the development proposal has addressed several of council's concerns. But if councillors are reminded to want to include as examples or dot points what the outstanding concerns still are, well then we need to be told what they are.
Yeah, and I think that needs to come from councillors.
Okay.
If you're prepared to put some things forward as part of your resolution, subject to the seconders.
I haven't got their full submission in front of me to go through them here. I've only got the ones that we initially put forward. Well, it is a lot of high quality agricultural land. It is, remains as such. That hasn't altered at all. Sorry, not as easy without their submission in front, their alterations in front. I can't do that because I'm using the iPad at the moment for another purpose.
Well, they did go to a lot of effort in their amendment report, and they commissioned other studies. This will be the issue with that point about the loss of agricultural land. They did commission a lot of studies to show that it will be used for grazing of the sheep, and that they could manage the ground cover. They had people that were agronomists and specialists that provided additional reports to try and negate that argument, Councillor Knight. That's the trouble. That's what they've done. Whether it's enough in Council's mind, that's subjective as well. But that is what they've done.
Could I ask if we could go back to the one submission, the verbal submission we had before us at the commencement of the meeting, and look at their comment with regard to valuation of neighbouring properties, because nothing they do is going to stop the devaluation of neighbouring properties. I mean, it's just common sense that if you can buy a hobby farm not aligned to a solar farm, you'll actually do it. I wonder if that was one point that we do not believe that they have been able to clarify to the benefit of our residents and ratepayers that there won't be any devaluation of their land as a result of having a neighbouring solar farm. I can't recall now exactly what else the handlers said. They were talking about, I'm sorry, that I just can't recall now exactly what they said.
Okay, so I've got the letter in front of me, councillors. So basically, the first issue they raised was around the important agricultural land. And then they moved on to, the lifestyle living of many residents is extremely important. Mr. Kane is saying that they've gone, in his opinion, quite a way to alleviate some of those by pushing the development back and doing further screenings. They then spoke about property devaluations. So you could say something like that they have been unable to provide evidence that the valuation of surrounding properties will not occur. If that was your idea. and then the...
Steve, could I
Yep. Yes. Yes,
just make a comment there, Steve?
Yes, Councillor Quinn.
Yes.
The most recent valuation, which I got yesterday on my place near the Colcan Solar Farm, I'm actually next door to it, the valuation has gone up 95%. So I don't know what the value was seek, but they're professional people, but my valuation on that block has gone up from 224,000 to 405,000.
And that's adjacent land.
And the bottom line is that's a small parcel of land, and there ain't many small parcels of land around. The value will always stick there, irrespective of what's opposite it.
Yes, that's right.
I think in context, though, Mayor, that valuation wouldn't have taken any account of any proposed solar farm.
No.
Valuation.
That's right.
Madam Mayor, can I just make a comment?
I think we're going to have to move on somehow because we're getting a bit bogged down here.
I think the valuation, just with the valuation, that's really out of our control anyway. We don't set the value of the properties. The valuer general does. So we can't, how can the solar company reassure us that that's not going to affect the value of the neighbouring properties?
But there is an opportunity to look at other cases over the state where a solar farm has been in place and operating before the last valuation was brought into being.
And do you have evidence, though? Do we have any evidence, though, that the valuation went down on neighbouring properties?
No, but that's what we're asking.
And I would suggest that if there were evidence, well, this proponent would have found it, because there was a comment in there about the devaluation. And as much as you're saying, Councillor, yes, we have no impact on what VGs decide to do with valuations, but we utilise those valuations for so many of the activities, and we know from other things that have been put forward to us over the period of our council that in some instances they're in the inappropriate place and would have devalued or would have had huge impacts on the lifestyle of the people. I still believe having this particular farm, as I said earlier, in proximity to so many lifestyle blocks, so many rural residential blocks, has to have an impact on lifestyle. I can't imagine that it wouldn't.
Okay. Mayor, so at the moment, the 2 dot points we've got, so we've got that second paragraph, which we changed the word addressed most to several of council's concerns. And then I suggest we put another short paragraph in that says, issues not satisfactorily addressed include the loss of high quality agricultural land, and the fact that they have been unable to provide evidence that the devaluation of surrounding land will not occur.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep. So mover and seconder happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you. I think we need to move along and take a vote. Those in favour? Including those issues?
Yeah.
Against?
Well, I did. My screen goes blank.
Well, I can see you, so are you voting against?
Yes, but every so often my screen goes blank. I don't know whether it's me or I'm certainly voting against, yeah.
Well,
Okay, so that's 7 in favour, I think. 7 in favour and 2 against. The 2 against being Councillor Wilton and Councillor Quinn.
correct. Thank you. And could that
no, excuse me, it won't be 7 and 2.
Oh,
because
sorry,
Councillor Hicks.
6 and 2.
Sorry, 6 and 2.
Correct. Thank you,
Just as well
Councillor
somebody's awake.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 5, which is the next one, the Walla Walla farm. Seconder, mover and a seconder.
Somebody next.
I'll move it with the change to some or several again. Council
Change to, just repeat.
several of council's concerns.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
I'd like to hear what Councillor O'Neill said, Madam Mayor.
Just repeat that, please, Councillor O'Neill.
Change the most of to the several, the same as with the last one.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it again for the sake of discussion.
Thank you. Now, Councillor O'Neill, do you wish to make some statements or some comments?
Well, looking at the rest of Annexure 2, they address those to what we're putting up as our reason for objecting, particularly the heat island effect and the development contribution still hasn't been addressed, has it?
The BPA has, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Madam Mayor, wasn't that addressed?
Yep.
To a certain extent with the General Manager and Mr. Kane?
Yes, it has been, I think.
Well, they've put a proposal to council which we haven't submitted to council yet. But look, I guess it's the negotiations are in line with negotiations of the other solar farms. So I guess we're suggesting that in relation to the contributions, council's probably going to be comfortable with those.
Yes.
So the heat island effect was one issue.
Again, the loss of the high quality agland, the whole mapping issue.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, I would suggest that the loss of high quality agricultural land and the determination of what it is the most important issue in the whole Fox and Dice at this point in terms of the arguments.
All right, well, Councillor O'Neill's just getting some of these dot points together. So,
could I speak in opposition or at this time, or wait?
No, just wait. Have you finished, Councillor O'Neill? Just
Still the issue of the function centre. I think is still an important one.
Thank you.
Sorry, what was that, Councillor O'Neill?
The function centre?
The effect that's going to have on the function centre.
Detriment to the function centre. Now, Councillor Knight? Oh, sorry, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I was just saying, I was just going to say that it was breaking up with Councillor O'Neill's last comment. I couldn't understand.
The dust nuisance with the construction and then as it goes on.
This council, Madam Mayor, most councillors would have received an email today from the proprietors of the function centre, and I suggest that they should have taken note of what was noted in that email today about their concerns with dust and dirt and et cetera and so forth. In view of the wedding centre, they're trying to create as a major host, an area of major hosting of events and weddings.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Councillor Knight, do you wish to make some comments?
I did.
Around the room, or what are you doing? You're moving house.
I had to try to open that email because I have not seen that one.
No, I haven't either.
So I'm making comment having not seen that, and someone hopefully can clarify with me. But I was looking to what they had taken it from 800 to 1200 metres and a 50-metre wide revegetation strip. And then they're also looking to crop that additional land so that it is a far more attractive area when viewed from the orange grove. They're leaving several more old growth trees and the scar tree. Well, I'm presuming a scar tree would never have been able to have been taken out anyway. And they're going to be relocated 50 metres further away from the substation than they had initially intended. It says they had the commitment to the VPA, and they had responses to the comments of the New South Wales Rural Fire Service. Now, I'm sorry that I can't open several things at once here, but it is for those reasons and the fact that it is not as heavily developed an area as the one we previously talked about, that there is some room to move on this particular one. I did vote in favour of it proceeding at the last time, and these comments have done nothing but enhance my belief that this one could be done without any lasting impact. Yes, the dust nuisance, and they're going to have to satisfy that. If there are functions going, they are just going to have to if this is approved. But yeah, I think they've gone again some way to answering those questions, and the ones that impact the orange grove the most are those attractive. Look, when you looked out, when you're out on the deck, well, you won't be seeing solar panels galore. You'll be seeing trees, and you'll also be seeing cropping.
Thank you. Any further comments from Councillor Weston? Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I think this entire area is an established farming community. There's the homes, there's the sheds, there's all the infrastructure for farming and cropping. And why should we go and start on a completely new industry and just mothball our wonderful farming land that's there? I can't see that it's a forward-thinking move at all. I think it's very backward. And I'd like to emphasise that as much as I could. Very backward. Go with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor. My comments are similar to the previous item, but I'd also reiterate, I think they've gone a lot further in trying to acknowledge the submissions this time. When we talk about the function centre, and it was the highlight of much of the objections, the function centre now have got beautiful agriculture vision for 270 degrees of a 360-degree spectrum. How much more in life do you want? It's a staggering amount that they've moved back. And if you wanted to take a wedding photograph, you've got 270 degrees out of the full circle. And if you're not satisfied with that, nothing is satisfied. And as I repeated with the last comment, people who are opposed to it are not going to change, whether it's good or bad. But I think it's only a personal observation. When you read the press, the state government are going to press on with it. And we're either part of the system or we're out of the system. And by God, we really need dollars to come into our shire from here on in, because Australia's going to be devastated for money. And this is an opportunity to create a lot of employment. There'll be some discomfort for people, but there'll be a lot of employment. And that's what makes the world go around, and that's what we're going to need.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill, do you wish to make any closing comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
no, I'm going to ask.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was a bit late. I was waiting for listening to everybody else. Yes. Can I just make another little comment?
Yes.
I felt reading through their responses that they had done, like Councillor Quinn said, they had made lots of changes to each concern. And with their panels, they actually don't have any of the cadmium, and that's one of the dangerous metals. So they've made, that's a different take on it as well. And if the senior staff are sort of more
accepting of the VPA. That's a step forward. This company has been a little bit more receptive to the council's request, and yes, it's another heartstrings, and we are in unknown charted territory at the moment with the way the world is. Australia really does need industry here as well, so it's another tough decision that's in front of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Shaw. Now, Councillor Parker.
Just a very, I suppose, maybe a naive comment, but I worry that the technology that is going to be placed on these solar farms, whether they go ahead, and I agree with Councillor Quinn that, like it or lump it, it probably will happen, unfortunately, for the people that are affected. But I just worry that the technology is not going to be there in 30 years' time for solar farms. And, can these companies just walk away after 15 years and leave solar panels sitting there? That really concerns me as a councillor. We're making a decision for the next 30 years, not for the next 5 years. And that worries me a lot, to be honest. Just a comment.
Yep, thank you. Now I'm going to ask you to vote.
Before you do that, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I better just clarify what the issues not adequately addressed are.
Okay.
To go in the correspondence. Okay,
yes.
So...
Councillor O'Neill?
No, well, I've got some written down here.
Yes.
So this is what I took down from the conversations that we've had. Issues not adequately addressed include the impact of the heat island effect, the loss of the continuing concern around the loss of high quality agricultural land, and question how they've assessed the value of the agricultural land subject to this development, and the abatement of the dust nuisance, particularly with regard to the impact on the function centre.
Yes. Right. All right.
There's one point you've missed there, Mr General Manager. Item number 1 alluding to the Walla Walla solar farm was the reduced levels of amenity from nearby residents. There are a number of residents who are very close to that. Irrespective of how far you shift the boundary back, they're still going to be affected.
Well, I understand that there are some arrangements in place to accommodate those property owners.
But the problem is we understand that there's going to be, but there's nothing down to say that it's going to happen.
Well, I beg to differ on that, but I can't make any further comment.
That's the problem with the whole debate, Madam.
Oh, well, look, this is development and that's how it works, unfortunately.
Okay, so that's...
But Madam Mayor, you've only got to drive down there and have a look, and you'll find out that the houses are very distant.
I know.
I'm talking about what was Councillor Meyer was talking about, all the hobby farms near the one in Gindra. The houses are very sparse out around this one.
Mm. Correct. Mostly, yep. Mr. General Manager.
No, that just makes 4 dot points if that's the desire of council.
All right, if council's happy with that, the mover and seconder.
Yes.
I'm now going to ask you to raise your hand so that I can see it. Your physical hand, your actual hand, not a virtual hand. Those in favour of that recommendation, please.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
In favour of the recommendation?
Yep.
Opposing?
Just
with those conditions.
we're going to clarify as to where we're going.
Yeah, okay. So, Madam Mayor, if you would like me to do that. So, the motion that is being voted upon, Councillor Weston, is the motion that's on page 6 of the addendum report, which I'll read out. The Council resolved to provide the comments contained within Annexure 2, which is the letter that I'll go through in a minute, and acknowledge that the modified development addresses the concerns of Greater Hume contained within its submission to the environmental impact statement. Perhaps we should say addresses several of the concerns. Council will raise concerns about being the appropriate regulatory authority under the Protection of the Environment Act. So then the letter says, as it is printed on the last page of that addendum report, under Annexure 2, the letter addressed to Rob Beckett. So if you've got that letter, Councillor Weston. So in the second paragraph, we're again changing most to several, and then putting in another paragraph that says issues not adequately addressed include the impact of the heat island effect, the loss of high quality agricultural land, and question how the assessment of the value of the land was undertaken, the impact, the abatement of the dust nuisance and impact on, particularly the impact on the function centre, and continuing concerns about the reduced amenity of nearby residents.
All appreciating that now?
I think so.
Thank you. Those in favour?
I didn't hear all the...
You there, Tony?
You didn't hear it all?
Yeah, I didn't hear it all. My iPad constantly drops out, and I think the fact is we can't get the NBN here. I don't know. That might be the case, but the screen goes back, Steve, to the introduction, joint meeting, etc., and then eventually it waltzes back to where it should be.
Yeah. Well, it's working off it's working off a mobile phone connection, Councillor Quinn. So I guess it just depends what your mobile phone signal is like at your property at Georgie West. But if you can hear me now, I'll just run through the issues that are to be included in the letter, which include issues not adequately addressed include the impact of the heat island effect, the loss of high quality agricultural land, and question how the assessment of the value of the agricultural land was undertaken. Concerns with the abatement of the dust nuisance, particularly with the impact on the function centre, and the reduced amenity for nearby residents.
Fade it out after you said the first point.
After the first point?
Fade it out after the first point. Don't worry about it. It's a problem in the house.
Yeah, no, well, that's all right. Can you hear me now?
I can, but as you talk, it'll fade out again. It constantly goes back, sort of thing. So
that happens a lot to me, Councillor Quinn.
Don't worry about it.
Righto.
Okay, I'm going to ask you again to vote. Those in favour of sending that the letter of objection, if you like, acknowledging, but a letter of objection. And I think that's basically what it is. Those in favour of that? We've got 1, 2, 3. I better read out who it is. Yeah. Councillor Weston, Councillor Parker, Councillor Meyer, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Shilg, and that's in favour. So against is myself, Councillor Knight, and Councillor Quinn, right?
Yep.
I can't see your hand, Councillor Quinn.
Yep, no.
Put it in front of your face. Put it in front of your face. Okay, so 3 against.
So we've got 5. Just hang on a second, Madam Mayor, and we'll just make sure we've got the right numbers. So 5, 4 and 3 against?
Yep. Yes. 5 in favour, 3 against.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep, correct.
Thank you.
How do we now invite Councillor Hicks to rejoin the meeting?
Yes,
well, that's going to be up to the General Manager.
I am to send him a text message, which I'm about to push the button on.
1 minute.
So Mr. Hicks should be shortly rejoining us.
And where's Councillor Meyer going? Because I have to leave the room.
Councillors O'Neill and Meyer left the meeting at...
We better have a 2-minute cessation.
7:05.
It's only
he's
time
back.
for order, Madam Mayor.
There you are.
He's
Okay,
rejoined.
it's over to you. I'm about to walk out.
What page am I on, please, before you leave?
You're on page 40 of 65.
40 on, okay, thank you.
Councillor
Governance
Wilton,
item number 1, is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillors, I draw your attention to item number 1 under the governance. Gradingham Council response to novel coronavirus or COVID-19 and the recommendation contained on page number 43 offering a number of bullet points under items 1 and 2.
Excuse me.
Somebody to move the recommendation, Councillor.
I think I should declare an interest in that I am secretary of a committee which actually rents premises, so this is a non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Do you want to take the opportunity, General Manager?
Well, that's fine for Councillor Knight to declare that interest.
Anybody else?
I'll move the recommendation.
I think it was moved. I think it was moved by Councillor Hicks and seconded Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, but I just want to query the.
Councillor Quinn, you've got the mic. Councillor Quinn.
The screen keeps going in and out, Mr. Acting Chairman.
Yeah.
I'll throw it under a bus shortly.
Maybe you need to sit in the paddock.
Fourth point, maybe I need to retire from this mad world.
Make your time, Councillor Quinn, and go slow.
The fourth point, Mr. General Manager, could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Well, look, what I'm suggesting there is that we refer the matter to the budget workshop, that we leave water, sewage and waste collection charges at the 2019-2020 level, basically. So there'll be no increase in those fees for the 2021 financial year.
Did you get that, Councillor Quinn?
I might be on the wrong page. I thought I was on page 43.
You are on page 43.
Right?
Oh, hang on. Sorry. No,
Yes.
you're right. I got me dot points mixed up. So, look, basically the local purchase preference policy includes, I guess, a maximum weighting of 5% over $10,000. So what I'm suggesting is that the minimum weighting is 10%, which would apply to tenders and contracts and so forth. So what that would essentially mean is that that's providing if you like, an advantage to a local contractor over an external contractor to the Shire of up to 10%. So, so if there were two tenders and one was 110,000 and the other was 100,000, then we would, and the 110,000 was local, but the 100,000 was external to the Shire, we would award the tender to the 110,000, the contract or the contractor that tendered 110,000. Because once you take the 10% off, it would be slightly cheaper than the other tender. So in that case, it would have a cost to council of $11,000.
Well, that's right.
But it's designed to try and create or to ensure where possible more of the local work stay local.
Satisfy the query, Councillor Quinn?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Acting Chairman.
Any further comment to be made on the resolution? If there's no comment to be made, I'll put it. All those in favour, please signify. In favour, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Which is all we've got. So Councillor Wilton and Councillor Knight are out.
I counted Councillor Knight. She was standing at the back. I could still see her face.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Knight, you can come back.
Yes, and Councillor Wilton can come back too. I might just have to send Councillor Wilton a quick message.
Councillor Wilton.
Just bear with us.
Listening.
I've sent her a text, so hopefully she'll be with us in a few moments. Do you want to ring Heather? Just bear with us.
Second time we try this will get better.
Well, look, it's a bit clunky where we've got people declaring interest, but I don't think there's much we can do about that. But there's one thing for certain anyway. I think Councillor Wilton. Oh, here she comes. I can see her coming. So that's great.
Welcome back. Your chair.
Oh, thank you. How far did you go through? All the way?
We're up to item 2, Madam
You're
Mayor.
up to page 44 of 65, item number 2.
Very good, very good. Office of the Local Government, Council Superannuation Discussion Paper. This should be a good one. Everybody would have read it, and I'd be interested in your
I don't think we should.
I'll move the resolution, Madam Mayor.
I'll second it.
No, you can't.
Well,
Can't. There isn't a resolution.
Council's consideration and comment.
That's right. But,
Could I ask?
Madam Mayor, I don't think we should.
I got lost
I don't
with
think we
everybody
should
talking at
go on
once.
discussing.
Just a minute, hang on. Councillor Quinn's talking.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My comment is I don't think we should waste any time discussing it. Just move on and leave it blank.
Is that your recommendation? Your motion?
Yep.
well,
Is there a second?
Just note the item.
well, perhaps we could have perhaps Councillor Quinn might make a recommendation that Council not make a submission.
That's right.
Very good.
Good.
And I'll second it.
JM.
Councillor Shield will second it.
Yes.
Any further discussion?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Knight?
I do believe we should have a discussion on it, and I think if we can organise one of these meetings to have that before the 8th of May, that we should do so. It may well end up that we decide not to make the submission, even after some discussion amongst ourselves. I do believe that we should be having superannuation paid for councillors, any elected member. There is no other boards that I know of, other than local government, where you don't get superannuation taken and participate in a superannuation plan out of that particular board. And we are a board. We're a board of management. We just happen to be one constituted under state government's legislation. I do believe it's worthy of some discussion because it's an important item taking this forward. I know there's not elections now for another year, but who knows? If we did decide to put forward a submission, we might actually find ourselves in a position where we can actually advertise the fact that there will be superannuation available for local government member representatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to support what Councillor Osborne has said. This came up in discussion at annual conference last year, and it was totally supported by the whole conference.
I agree too, Madam Mayor, with Councillor Knight.
Can I just ask a question regarding the, should that go ahead, can we actually, or could we nominate which super fund we want it to be paid into? Or does it have to be a collective from the council?
No,
it's not very clear.
you would be able to nominate it, Councillor Wilton.
Yeah.
Staff can nominate a variety of superannuation schemes. It's not tied in any way, shape or form.
Could I please move an amendment then?
Yep.
Yes.
I'd move that we do put together a workshop by technology to discuss this particular item and decide at that workshop whether or not to put forward a submission.
I'd second that, please.
Thank you. It's seconded by Councillor Parker. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Knight?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councillor Parker?
No, thank you.
Speakers against, Councillor Quinn?
Madam Mayor, isn't that a direct negative to the motion?
Well,
It's only a workshop.
I think you said that it wasn't worth talking about.
No, what we finalised on there was the council not make our submission to the Office of Local Government Councillor Superannuation discussion paper.
Right, and now Councillor Knight is saying that we need to hold a workshop to discuss the situation.
Yes.
Is that a direct negative or not?
It is. What we should do is we vote on the resolution before us, and if it gets up, it gets up. If it fails, then the
put forward an
idea can come up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, did we have a seconder?
We did.
You have a
it
second?
was moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Shulk.
Shulk, yes, thank you. I'm going to put that to the vote. Those in favour of...
Do you want me to read it out again?
Yes, please.
Right.
No further discussion.
The motion is that council not make a submission to the Office of Local Government Councillor Superannuation discussion paper.
All right, those in favour? In favour? Hands up. Yep. That's 3 in favour. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yep.
That's right, isn't it? 6
So
and 3.
the 3 in favour was Councillor Wilton, Councillor Quinn
Shulk
and Councillor
and Shulk.
Shulk.
Yes. Others against.
Yep, and the other 6 against.
Oh, 3 against, 6 and... 6,
No.
yeah, 3.
3, 4, 6 against. So the motion is lost.
I'd like to now move a motion that we hold a workshop on this particular subject and determine whether or not we wish to make a submission.
Well, let's say...
Councillor O'Neill,
Councillor
do you wish to speak, either of you?
No, thanks.
No. Councillor Shulk, do you wish to speak?
Just one comment. I just can't see. We both, basically, councillors are given a token fee. We're not employed. I just can't understand why we would expect superannuation out of it. We're not employed and we're not on wages as such. That's
So
just...
we pay taxation on it.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? I want everyone to have the opportunity if they wish.
Madam Mayor, can I suggest we amend the motion to include that a workshop be held on Wednesday the 29th of April to consider the discussion paper with the view of formulating a submission.
Thank you. Are you happy with that? Mover and seconder?
I don't know that we have to say with the view of formulating a submission, with a view to deciding whether a submission should be put forward. Because if we're going to say we're going to formulate a submission, the 3 people opposed may well convince the other 6 that it's not worth putting a submission in, and there's not much point in holding. Yeah, if we're going to make a submission, we need to have a discussion about what that submission might include and the reasons if we decide to make a submission.
Okay, so I'll just read it out again.
Yes,
that a workshop be held on Wednesday the 29th of April to consider the Council of Superannuation discussion paper with the view of deciding whether a submission be formulated.
Thank you.
Correct weight? All right. Any further discussion?
Well, it's unlikely that I'd take part in the workshop. I find it very stressful, and I won't outline the reasons why I don't think we should worry about superannuation. Perhaps after 35 years, it might might be nice if they made it retrospective, but they're not going to do and listen to. But anyway, the motion's before the council meeting, sorry.
That's right. Okay, I'm asking you now to vote. Those in favour of that motion. Councillors Meyer, Parker, Hicks, O'Neill.
For a workshop.
Weston.
Yep.
For the workshop, yes. Those opposed, Councillor Shilg and Councillor Quinn and myself. So therefore that motion has been carried. Thank you. All right, moving along. Corporate and community, item number 1.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Councillor Parker will second.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, if I can just make a comment, because we might need to just change what I had in the report, because a bit has changed since this was published.
Was put together.
So just for the information of councillors, after this report was prepared last Thursday, the New South Wales government announced that they would be funding up to $82 million to cover the funding shortfall for local government providers of childcare. So at this point in time, that's the only information that we have. We've got a commitment from the New South Wales government, but I haven't seen any detail. So if I might suggest, if we could amend the motion to read that council continue to monitor funding options for local government childcare services, and if required, and then it just continues, call on the Minister for Education and so on and so forth through as printed. So it's basically just saying that we keep a watching brief on the announcement from the New South Wales government, and in particular what it means for Greater Hume Council in dollar terms, and then if required we continue our lobbying of the Federal Education Minister and our federal member to ensure that adequate funding is provided in the long term. It's
I can't. One at a time. Councillor O'Neill.
What about our carers that are at home?
Okay. Okay, yep, good question, Councillor O'Neill. Family daycare, what we're doing in relation to our family daycare educators is that the advice I've been given is that all of our family daycare educators have an ABN in their own right. So they will be eligible to apply for and receive the JobKeeper allowance because they are a sole trader, okay? So what we're doing is that we will be getting paid 50% of what used to be the childcare subsidy for our family daycare educators. Over the longer term, we've got some immediate measures that we're putting in place that I'll go through in a minute, but over the longer term, we will be paying the family daycare educators the 50% that we will be receiving, so we'll be passing that on, as well as them assisting them to complete the paperwork for the JobKeeper allowance. So the combination of those two things should mean that the overwhelming majority of our educators will not be disadvantaged. So a couple of other things that we'll be doing, I've asked our children's services staff to engage an accounting firm from Albury to provide a workshop, if you like, for our educators to walk them through the process of applying for JobKeeper. So we will be funding that and providing that service. In the short term, my advice is that next week the federal government will be paying us a double payment of the 50% allowance that we are going to receive, and that will allow us to pay the family daycare educators a full normal pay next fortnight. And then a fortnight after that, when their next pay is due, by that stage we're into early May, and our advice is by then the JobKeeper situation should have kicked in. So we believe that we'll be able to work with our educators to get them through until the JobKeeper allowance is paid. And from there on in, as I said, the overwhelming majority of them, with the combination of the two payments, shouldn't be financially disadvantaged. So that's what we're working on, and with the centres, as I said, you know, we have a commitment from the New South Wales government, but no detail yet. So I can't put my hand on my heart and say that the funding situation for the centres is resolved. All I can say is that we're in a better position than what we were at the end of last week.
This time last week. Thanks, Mr. Smith. Councillor Parker.
Mr. Smith, does that JobKeeper allowance also allow our childcare workers that are working in the centres to apply for that? Like, no. Have you registered as in council?
No, that was the issue. That was the issue that really brought this whole thing undone. Is that the package announced by the federal government, whereby they were paying the childcare providers 50% in lieu of the childcare subsidy, was based on the premise that those providers would be able to then apply for the JobKeeper allowance for their employees. Where local government came unstuck was that local government isn't eligible to apply for JobKeeper.
That's right, they aren't.
So our revenue was halved overnight. So that.
All right. Any further questions? Sorry, Mr. Smith. Do you wish to make another?
No, that's it. Look, as soon as I know any further information about exactly what the New South Wales package means for us, I'll certainly send some advice out to councillors. I suspect that at the moment that we haven't received anything from the New South Wales government, because they're holding meetings and working out exactly how it's all going to be paid. It's interesting to note that the Victorian government are holding out and basically saying that funding for early childhood care and education is a federal issue and not a state issue, so they're not coming to the party. So there's still a bit of water to go under the bridge yet.
Councillor Knight.
My question was the same one Councillor O'Neill asked, so no problem.
Okay. All right. Any further comments or questions from anyone? No. No. Prepared to vote? Oh, Councillor Schultz?
No, I said no.
Prepared to vote. Those in favour? I think that would be unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. All right. The Whole Committee.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. The seconder, Councillor O'Neill. So, Councillor Schultz and Councillor O'Neill. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Schultz?
Oh, it's just a sad state of affairs, but it's just a fact of, not enough people anymore in the little communities.
That's right. Yes.
Sad to see it go, but
unfortunately,
very much so.
Right. Unfortunately, that's the way things are going. And you know, as we know, we've had other hall committees fold over the last few years, and
yes,
I suspect that there'll be more in the future.
Yes.
Yes, rather sadly. All right, asking you to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Engineering. I think we're asking Mr. Blackie something here. Have you got the report in front of you, Mr. Blackie? Do you wish to speak? Recommendation, councillors. Councillor O'Neill?
I'll move the recommendation. Yep.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded, Councillor Schultz.
Yep.
Any comments? No, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. I'm pleased to see the Frampton Court thing in there. There will be a lot of people who will be very happy about that one being finished, or started anyway, and finished. All All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Some receives and notes, part B.
I'll move part B, C and D.
B, C and D. Okay, any comments, anybody wish to make any statements?
Councillor Hicks.
You all talked out.
We need a seconder, Madam Mayor. We need a seconder.
Do you wish to vote?
Oh, Councillor Meyer.
It was moved by Councillor
Hicks.
Hicks and seconded by
Councillor Meyer.
Councillor Parker. Prepared to vote? Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Thank you. Now, where's my sheet here? I think we're no matters of urgency. No, surely not. Committee of the whole? No. Any further discussion? I'm going to close the meeting.
Just before
Thank you very much. The meeting is now closed.
All right. Well, just before everybody signs off, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to say thanks, unfortunately it's got to be
Just before everybody heads off, I just would like to say.
He's muted himself.
Oh, hang on. I have to.
Is he still there, the general manager?
Sorry. I'd just like to say that, given that this is only our second attempt at a workshop or council meeting via electronic means, I think we did very well under the circumstances tonight, and I think you can all be very happy with how you went, and it's going to be the new norm for a few months, so just get used to it, I suppose, and if we can come up with some ways to improve it slightly, well, then that's what we'll do.
Yes, I think it's a bit of a moving feast, and we just have to watch this space, really, and anything that crops up, as the General Manager said, we'll attempt to fix it.
Or grin and bear it.
Thanks very much, everybody. That was good. Yes, I was a bit concerned, I must say. I'm not necessarily nervous, just concerned about how I'd finish.
Look, I think we need a special round of applause for Councillor Quinn. He did an exceptional job.
Yes.
Absolutely. And,
well done, Quinny.
And Riverina Water are looking forward to participating in this.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Yes. Safe travels, everybody.
Safe travels, everybody. Don't trip over the mat as you're walking out the room or something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Well, we got through it.